Wolves were once present throughout North America. They roamed from just north of Mexico City all the way up into the Arctic Circle.
Wolf-like canids have actually been in North America for over 40 million years, and the modern wolf has been here for about 1 million years. So they've been an important part of ecosystems throughout time.
In a very short period of time after European settlement, basically beginning in the early 1800s through the mid-1900s, there was a concerted effort to eradicate wolves because of very innate cultural fear in European culture of wolves.
It's just the fear factor. You know, I mean, wolves can look intimidating, and they just have that mysterious look, and they have not only the mystique but the danger behind them too. And I think that's what's intrigued people for centuries.
There is still a lot of fear, and we in general as humans tend to fear things we don't understand. And I think the wolf is a perfect example of that. I think those who are afraid of wolves, whether they be afraid of getting attacked by them, or they be afraid that it'll ruin their livelihood or prevent them from being able to go and harvest an elk during a hunting season to feed their family, I think those fears are very much the result of not understanding the wolf.
Once people migrated to this area of the country, fear was prevalent with any kind of predator, and to eliminate the animal was the answer versus trying to live with the animal. One of the reasons why grizzly bears and wolves were eradicated from the area was simply out of fear.
And to this day, there are people that still fear the wolf, thinking that if they go camping that they need to be aware of wolf packs that will come in and attack them.
A lot of this stuff comes from European ancestry, where wolves were looked at as beasts and demons and made up children's nightmares. And so that attitude came across when people moved here, and as they expanded into the West and they found wolves, led people just to say, oh, we need to get rid of this, we need to have control over what's happening here, and we need to get rid of predators. The sad part is that going back that far in history, people didn't really have a total view of how an ecosystem works.
The federal government got involved in about 1914 and actually created a special branch of the government called the U.S. Biological Survey, and their primary duty, that government agency, was to hire young men to go out west and to find those last wolves and eliminate them.
The government's involvement in the eradication of wolves in the Rocky Mountains was paramount. Basically, nationwide government predator control programs were in place to remove predators such as mountain lions, bears, and wolves from the landscape. Someone in my position as a ranger who now in 2007 is trying to restore and understand wolves, my position 100 years ago would have been to go out and try to remove wolves from the landscape. So it was actually park policy to have their biologists, their ranger forces to go out and try to get rid of these creatures from the landscape. In Yellowstone National Park, by the early 1920s, 1926 actually was the last year a wolf was documented being in the park and was killed. And so their history here has been one of removal and eradication. It's been part of a naivety about what they represent in an ecosystem. And they've been absent in Yellowstone for approximately 70 years until about 1995 when they were reintroduced.
It took, with that kind of effort, another 30 years for them to be completely successful. They exemplified the effort to tame the West. On the one hand, we were eliminating native peoples, and on the other hand, we were eliminating the top carnivore, which was Canis lupus.
Back in at the turn of the century, it was the government's job to make the land safe for Easterners to come out in the West and to establish their homes and homesteads and to populate the West. And part of the government programs at the time were not only giving land away to homesteaders, but also to reducing the impacts of predators, predation. And so, yeah, the government at the time paid trappers and paid bounties on bears and mountain lions and wolves.
Wolves were eradicated back in the 40s, and through poisoning, through bludgeoning, through gases, through trapping, I mean, they were basically just shot on sight. I think a pelt went for about 2 cents.
That effort to eliminate wolves and other predators, other carnivores from the landscape was part of the cultural focus of taming the land and turning it into a pastoral countryside. Once that effort really got ramped up in the late 1800s through the mid-1900s, we saw a very drastic ecological nightmare begin to unfold, which only now do we really have a sense of what that ecological devastation is.
Now we're finding out that without a top predator like the wolf, now we have a whole nother set of problems. Yellowstone had a big problem without the wolves being in that area, because of course not only did they have the overpopulation of a lot of the prey animals, they even had too many coyotes in that area, and everything was off balance.
The other very fascinating part about wolf recovery in Yellowstone is it's a great opportunity to understand how they influence the structure and the function of ecosystems. And a lot of research is being done right now to understand that. So we can look at how wolves are influencing the elk populations, the bison populations, the moose populations.
Typically, what happens when you take any animal in a large scale out of a system, anything that an animal affects obviously is now changed.
Well, what we're seeing from research in Yellowstone National Park is that since wolves were reintroduced in 1995, in a very short period of time, a decade, there is a change in the types of vegetation that they're seeing in areas where wolves are present. Prior to wolf reintroduction, aspen and willow were on the verge of extinction because the elk and the deer, primarily the elk, had not had any reason since the early 1920s to move around.
When they brought the wolves back, everything started to replenish, everything from the wildflowers out there that they hadn't seen in years because of so many prey animals that was in that area that trampled all of them down, destroyed all the roots underneath the ground. The aspen trees, hundreds of acres were destroyed out there.
Elk do graze and browse on willow and aspen, and in the absence of wolves, heavily browse, and actually to a point where regeneration was no longer occurring in a lot of these different plant communities, and particularly in riparian areas. Now, what we've seen since the return of the wolf is a sort of response in a lot of these vegetation communities, the aspens and willows.
Since wolves were reintroduced, suddenly the elk that used to be able to hang out anywhere they wanted and browse everything down to the ground now have to keep moving around because the wolves live amongst those elk.
It does seem that since the wolves were brought in 1995, there's been a significant increase in the number of grizzlies in Yellowstone, and we think there's a definite connection there. What we see all the time is when a wolf pack kills an elk, grizzlies will get the scent of the carcass and they will come and take it away from the wolf pack. So ever since the wolves have arrived, the grizzly population here has benefited by getting a tremendous amount of additional meat in their diet thanks to the wolves. So we think that's a significant reason for their increase.
We have found that wolves have had a very significant impact on the members of the scavenger communities here. The ravens, the bald eagles, the golden eagles, the coyotes, the foxes, the magpies. all these animals are benefiting to a large degree by this new presence of carrion, the carcasses that aren't totally consumed in one sitting by wolves.
They brought the wolves back in, and within a few years, everything started to go back to the balance where it should be. Now, it's a very natural balance that they have back out there in the Yellowstone area.
And the only thing that's changed since 1995 is that wolves are back on the ground again, doing what they do best.
The wolf's protection really came about in the early 1970s with the creation of the Endangered Species Act.
The wolves were put on the endangered species list, and plans were started to look at bringing wolves back to their historic range throughout the country.
That was a paramount piece of legislation in which we put in place an acceptance and a belief that, hey, there's species out there that are diminishing in population, that play a very important role in ecosystems. Whether we knew it or not, just accepting that that was something that was important to restore these species back to the landscape.
Well, in the 1980s, there was a lot of talk both within the Park Service and among people and wildlife organizations to look into the possibility of bringing wolves back to the park. Eventually, in the summer of 1994, the park got approval to bring wolves back.
Obviously, you can't do that in some places because of the growth of humanity, and so they looked at certain areas of where wolves could be repopulated and have a chance to survive. And so the northern Rocky Mountains is one of the most perfect places for wolves to exist.
In the mid-1990s, there was a fairly large effort in Yellowstone and central Idaho to reintroduce wild wolves that had been captured in Canada and transplanted to Yellowstone and central Idaho.
It took many years of planning to figure out what was the best way to bring wolves back. And the two major philosophies were, should we let them recolonize on their own, because wolves were documented coming down into Glacier National Park from Canada, naturally colonizing across the border. However, they clearly weren't getting into places like Idaho and the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So it was seen that the most cost-efficient and most biologically successful way to bring wolves back to ecosystems like Yellowstone was actually to do a reintroduction, in which we could go up to Canada, take wolves from the landscape up there, and bring them back and put them on the landscape in Yellowstone National Park. And that was the technique that was used here to both Idaho and Yellowstone to reintroduce the wolf.
No one had ever really done anything like this before, in the sense of catching wolves in some distant place and then bringing them to a national park to reintroduce the population.
All that was required under the Endangered Species Act for recovery was a minimum of 100 wolves in 10 breeding pair. At the end of last year, we had 42 breeding pair and 660 wolves. So we had 6 times as many wolves basically as were required for delisting in Idaho.
Presently, there are about 1,000 wolves in Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana. So in the aggregate, about 1,000 wolves, a few hundred in each of those states, mainly in the Yellowstone National Park area and central Idaho.
At this time, we estimate that there's probably about 143 wolves inside Yellowstone National Park. It's normal for the population to fluctuate from time to time. For example, last year we had very poor pup survival, we think because of canine diseases. But luckily this year there's been very good pup survival, so there's been a pretty good increase this year.
Colorado, to the best of our knowledge, has not had a breeding population of wolves since 1945, when the last wild wolf was killed in the South San Juan Mountains.
The reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone in Idaho is probably one of the most successful conservation activities that we've done as a country. Biologically, the wolves have done incredibly well in these areas.
Wolves have basically recovered in that 7-year period of time. They went from 35 wolves that were reintroduced to more than 10 breeding pair in the state of Idaho, and within the 3 states, 30 breeding pair well distributed among the 3 states of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming.
That effort has gone very well in terms of reseeding those areas with wolves. And now what we need to do is have the federal government redouble its efforts to reintroduce wolves to other places within former range.
I don't foresee Colorado reintroducing them. They've had various meetings, Division of Wildlife, and different organizations, and they've agreed upon letting the wolves naturally reintroduce themselves from the Yellowstone area.
One of the main ideas of bringing wolves back to places like Yellowstone and Idaho is that through time they will naturally disperse out and colonize new areas and create a connectivity between these populations, so you have not only individuals moving back and forth, but also reproducing, so you have gene flow and this connectivity. In terms of wolves leaving the Idaho, Yellowstone, Northwest Montana area and moving southward or westward into states like Oregon or down into Colorado and Utah is very likely from a biological standpoint, in that wolves, it's well within the natural dispersal distances that wolves are capable of doing.
Certainly, we know that wolves have the capacity to make long distance walkabouts.
There was a little female that was killed out on I-70 out by Fort Collins, and they tracked her from being in the Yellowstone area.
But those are usually individual animals traveling long distances, often looking for a mate. They've been kicked out of their pack or have decided to leave for some reason, and they're out there looking to find a member of the opposite sex to create a new pack with. And yet, that gives us no hope that wolves will naturally repopulate Colorado on their own, because there's a very significant ecological barrier between southern Wyoming and northern Colorado.
I'm projecting within the next 5-6 years that we'll probably have an established pack in our state.
I don't necessarily expect wolves to move into places like Colorado soon from Yellowstone. We have had, over the last 10 years, a couple individuals move as far south as Colorado naturally. However, in order for a population to get established, you would need multiple individuals going down there and reproducing. And in the short-term future, I think that's very challenging right now in sort of the political and social system in which we're living in. However, I think given enough time and enough social acceptance and tolerance, that wolves will eventually get there.
We think that there's still a possibility that we can affect the Park Service decision on whether or not to use wolves as part of a larger set of tools to help affect elk behavior. Interestingly, even though they have the evidence from Yellowstone that wolves are a long-term and very effective solution to the problem, they've chosen instead to ignore the need for wolves and to call for sharpshooters and kill hundreds of elk over the course of many years.
I think in a lot of ways, people are looking to see what happens here in the Rocky Mountains. How successful has this reintroduction been? What are the management tools that we can use? And what is the information that we have from the science? And that's really important, is this long-term scientific monitoring to really understand what impact wolves do have on their prey populations, how successful they are in colonizing new areas. And so I think waiting to see the lessons learned from places like Yellowstone or Idaho will be crucial in creating a platform on whether or not we will reintroduce them to new areas such as Colorado or other parts of the United States. Right now, I think there's talk, but I don't know if there's anything that's about to happen in the next 5 years that I'm aware of. conflict between humans and wolves, it's a really fascinating subject. There's something about the wolf that we mankind are very pathological about. We're very emotionally connected to wolves, and it's either we really like them or we really hate them. There's kind of very few people that are in the middle ground with wolves. Our conflict with wolf came at a time when we were trying to raise sheep and cattle on the landscape, hunt wild ungulates such as the elk and the deer and the bison to feed ourselves, and because we saw the wolf doing these same things out there on the landscape, right there, that to us was sort of a conflict, and something that we spent a lot of energy for generations and generations trying to take care of, and that really came down to the philosophy of trapping, poisoning, shooting, anything we could do to remove these competitors on the landscape.
The conflicts between humans and wolves go back to the beginning of time. And, you know, predators tend to compete for prey. You know, different predators, bears and lions will compete with wolves for calf elk, say, and humans will compete for ungulates or for prey. Wolves tend to get into trouble with sheep and with cattle. We call sheep wolf magnets at times in areas. You have a band of 1,000 or 2,000 sheep moving through. It's hard to keep track of that many. And when they're in an area for a while, wolves will pick up a few. And there are places in the state where we don't have conflict, but usually where there are wolves and sheep, we tend to have some problems, and with livestock too. It's not outrageous. We lose maybe a couple hundred sheep a year that are confirmed loss to wolves, and maybe 25 head of livestock, cattle, that are lost annually, confirmed loss. But we know that those are ones that are found and confirmed. We also know that there may be 6 to 7 times as many that are killed by wolves that are never found. They're up in the woods, they get killed and they get partially eaten or consumed by other predators, or they melt down, and they're not ever found or confirmed. If you're the person that's losing the livestock, it's an impact. Statewide, it's distributed among everything. It doesn't sound like much, but I, for one, couldn't be throwing out $500 bills every time a wolf killed one of my calves. And I don't think very many people can do that. So it's an impact, certainly to some.
We know that wolves have the capacity to kill humans, but in general, they don't view humans as food.
Wolves do not look at people as a prey item.
Well, the danger of a wolf attacking a person is about as close to zero as you can get. The normal, healthy wild wolf doesn't want to have anything to do with human beings. So if I was to accidentally get near a wolf, pretty much for sure, once the wolf saw me, it would run away. They're far more interested in avoiding you than in bothering you.
Wolves are very elusive animals, and if they come in wild, people allow them to be wild, they're going to stay as far away from humans as possible.
If you take any group of humans, doesn't matter what the demographics are, you could take 90-year-olds, you could take infants out into the backcountry, and if you're dealing with wolves that have not been habituated, you have nothing to fear from those animals.
For you to go out to Yellowstone at any time of the year, even off-season, to be able to spot a wolf out there, consider yourself extremely lucky.
Any healthy wild wolf is not a threat to humans.
Wild animals are unpredictable animals. Any wild animal is a threat to a human if you find yourself in a situation that's got everything going against you.
Any large carnivore, any wildlife species can be a threat to humans.
Certainly any animal that lives in the wild and eats meat for a living poses some threat to humans, at least if it's big enough to, you know, take you down, be it a mountain lion or a bear or a wolf. But when you look at the incidents over time of wolves attacking humans, what you'll find is that in North America there's been maybe one instance, and that's been in very recent times, that a population of wild wolves, a pack, if you will, has attacked a human and killed them and eaten them.
There was a time when we used to tell people that there was never any documented case of wolves ever attacking humans. There was a case a couple of years ago up in Canada where some wolves did attack some campers, and those wolves were habituated, so somebody had started to feed them.
Wolves are like any other wild animal. We never tell somebody that there's any guarantees that a wolf wouldn't come after someone. But if you look at the documented history in over 100 years in North America, they've had less than 100 cases of wolf-human interaction as far as attacks go. And up until about 2 years ago, there was never a documented case of a wild wolf killing a human being. Even if so that it was attributed to wolves, you're looking at one death recorded in North America in over 100 years from wild wolves.
We haven't really seen much in the way of injuries caused by wolves in the lower 48, but we have seen some in the northern hemisphere, and those are usually a result of wolves being food conditioned, have gotten food from dumps or campgrounds, and also become habituated to humans, have lost their fear of humans. That's when we see injuries. People not respecting wildlife, and the wolves having lost the respect of humans.
In theory, if a person was in an area where maybe people were deliberately putting out food for wolves and that was affecting their degree of wildness, that might be a different story, just like if people were feeding bears or any other wild animals, that could cause a change in their behavior.
Whether it's a coyote, a bear, approaching moose, elk, the point is that people need to stay away from wildlife. You need to give them the appropriate amount of space so you don't have that conflict.
Any habituated wolf is a problem wolf. It could potentially become dangerous to humans. Is that a wolf problem? No, that's a human problem. That is us as a human species that has taught that animal to not fear us and therefore to expect food from us.
It's a risk, but put it in perspective, it's not much.
A lot of people think that wolves are going to wipe out the elk herd, and we just don't have any evidence that that's happened in systems out there.
They're obviously killing elk and deer. That's what wolves do. But if they're wiping out the population, I think stats show that that's not the case. I know that grizzly bears, again, also, and I'm not trying to put the blame on grizzly bears either, but everybody seems to want to blame the wolf for everything, and grizzly bears kill just as many calves as wolves do.
We have concerns in a few areas of the state where they may be, in addition to other predators, in addition to poor habitat conditions, impacting our big game populations. Statewide, no, not yet. No, we haven't seen that. Our elk populations are doing pretty well statewide, so are our deer populations. We haven't seen hardly any reductions in deer populations at all in relation to wolves. Our only concerns in a couple parts of the state are with elk.
Wolves and elk have evolved together for thousands and thousands of years. So it really doesn't make sense to think of a wolf as causing its prey to go extinct, because then you would have the wolf go extinct. And so, you know, that's a very interesting topic to talk about, but nowhere out there do we really have any good evidence that wolves will be driving an elk herd to extinction. Otherwise, elk wouldn't have been here prior to the wolf being eradicated. And so we don't see that as a possibility at all. You certainly will have a fluctuating dynamic with populations of elk and wolves going up and down, but it's very unlikely that you'll have any sort of dramatic decrease in an elk population towards extinction.
One of the things that wolves has done is change the migration patterns in a lot of these animals. So where you used to see a lot of elk and there were wolves reintroduced to that area, the elk are going to learn to migrate in a different area. I mean, again, the predator-prey relationship.
If predators kill off all of their prey, there's nothing left to eat, which means they go extinct as well. Predator and prey relationships are quite cyclic, therefore they ebb and flow through time. And typically predators lag behind their prey. So right now we have an abundance of prey in many of the ecosystems where wolves were reintroduced. Yellowstone in particular had an overpopulation of elk, and everyone will agree to that. However, when the prey does eventually start to decline, it's much harder for wolves to be able to hunt them, to be able to find them, and therefore wolf numbers start to decrease because of starvation, because they don't have enough food.
You hear a lot of talk about how wolves are causing our elk population to decline. And what we think is going on here is it is true that our elk population has declined by about 44% since 1995 until current time. And certainly wolves have played a role in that. However, there's been a lot of research done on looking at what is impacting our elk population. And what we talk about in Yellowstone is that it's a multi-causal factor of causing the elk population decline. And that elk in the Yellowstone ecosystem face a lot of pressure. They face pressure from a multi-carnivore system. We have 6 dominant carnivores in this ecosystem: the wolf, the grizzly bear, the black bear, the coyote, the mountain lion, and of course humans. And with that many carnivores in a system, that's a lot of pressure on an ungulate population. The other thing that has a very large impact on ungulates, and we see this all over the world, is weather, is climate. And so in a system like Yellowstone with a very dynamic climate, we face everything from forest fires to severe drought to severe winters. All of those play a very, and arguably a much greater pressure on an elk herd than carnivores do. So when we talk about our elk population declining, wolves certainly play a role in that. However, research that has been done here in Yellowstone suggests that over the last 10 years, if you remove wolves from the picture, the decline in elk is something that likely would have occurred anyway due to elk population being at an all-time high just prior to wolves being reintroduced at around 19,000 individuals. And so when you're at an all-time high, it's really hard to go anywhere but down. And so what we think has happened here is that with human harvest of an elk population leaving the park during the hunting season, wolves, and then we're facing about a 7-year drought right now, which impacts forage quality and pregnancy rates and survival. And then of course severe winters that we've had over the last 12 years have also taken their toll. So all these things combined is likely the cause of an elk decline, but it's very complex, and certainly you can't point to just one of those as an ultimate factor. Wolves may play a more important role in the future, but over the last 12 years, they're just one small piece of the puzzle.
It's a balance of nature, and when you have an area like Yellowstone, if you don't have a predator, you're going to have a balance out of whack of the predator-prey relationship. That's one of the reasons why wolves were brought back into the park.
So will the population in Idaho of elk decline somewhat once wolves were introduced? Yes, absolutely they will. We all knew that before that reintroduction occurred. Will they totally decimate the elk? No, they will not. They will put the elk back into a healthy status of numbers, and then eventually wolf numbers will decline. And then that will allow the elk to increase again, and then wolf numbers will increase, and we will see this cyclic curve occur over the next many generations.
As far as broad-scale reduction in the elk population due to wolves, we haven't seen that yet. Our elk populations have been fairly stable. Some of the populations have declined in northern Idaho, and they're increasing in southern Idaho. So, and it's not very well correlated to where wolves are.
I think that what we need to do is figure out a way to get the information out, the correct information out, and have people who feel that wolves are wiping out the population have an opportunity to present them with facts.
wolves are reintroduced into a place like Colorado, there's going to be a significant upturn in the level of hysteria, perhaps on both sides, but saying that wolves on the ground are going to cause the end of ranching in the West.
If you're a livestock producer and you lose 50 sheep in the night, that is a big impact on your livelihood. And so what we find is that when it does impact the livestock industry, it impacts very few people, and the same people typically get hit by the same problems time and time again because they happen to live in that beautiful valley where all the elk and deer like to be. It's a great place to raise sheep and cattle, and the wolves are naturally drawn there.
What you see is that in areas where wolves and livestock share common ground, we have less than 1 in 10,000 head of livestock being killed by wolves. More livestock in those areas where they share common ground with wolves will be killed by lightning in any single year.
And what we see from a long-term perspective is that over the last 10 years of wolves being back in Yellowstone, they're playing a very small role in the livestock industry in the surrounding areas. In other words, wolves are killing so few cattle and sheep that it really is not having a significant impact on this industry.
Even as far as ranching situations, I think there's enough wildland still left in Colorado that they're going to stay in the remote areas.
I would say on a large scale, the livestock industry has many more problems to deal with in terms of impacting them than wolves. So for example, disease, weather, other predators, domestic dogs even, have a far larger effect on livestock producers than wolves do. What do we have as management tools to deal with a situation if you are a livestock producer and you're having chronic wolf problems? And I think right now there is a good system in place. There's a compensation system through private organizations. There is the removal of problem wolves or non-lethal means to try to keep wolves out of livestock. And I think what's going to have to happen is sort of a philosophical switch in how we produce livestock on the landscape, and what we can do to protect our livestock and to have a certain practice of animal husbandry that's more conducive to living in a landscape with wolves. It can be done, and it's done in many areas. I think what we're already finding in a relatively short time frame is a lot of livestock producers are learning how to live with wolves. Some of them are learning that they're just not a problem, and those that are having problems with wolves are learning the tools in which they can help minimize losses due to wolves.
We are the primary threat to wolf survival.
There's always going to be people that don't want them around. The biggest threat to the wolf is man, and that's what's happened throughout the centuries.
Humans the primary threat for wolves, certainly.
Humans certainly pose one of the most significant threats to wolves. From a natural perspective, if we look at what the main cause of mortality for our wolves in Yellowstone, it's actually other wolves. Wolves are territorial animals that compete for space and prey and resources, and they will kill each other in that competition relationship. But outside of wolves affecting other wolves, and also the occasional risk of injury due to hunting and killing prey, such as elk and bison and moose, humans are certainly the greatest threat to wolves. And this happens from vehicle hits, but largely from direct persecution of wolves, illegal poaching, people that just do not believe the wolf should be there, and that is a direct threat to wolves.
Throughout the world where wolves are native animals, probably the #1 cause of death would be human-related, primarily by hunting or trapping, or in some cases maybe just because people don't like wolves and they would shoot them on sight. So throughout the whole history of humans and wolves, wolves have very good reason to be very much afraid of us because of all the things that we've done to them.
Clearly, we are responsible for their eradication throughout the lower 48 states, and while we are now working to be better stewards of them and to restore them to their former range, there is still poaching that goes on.
The presence of humans can be a problem for wolves, but it can also be their benefactors, because you can't have one without the other. We're here, we're not going anywhere. And wolves, we've guaranteed, the states and the feds have guaranteed that wolves are going to be here forever. People need to kind of understand that.
The biggest threat to a wolf, of course, is any ranching communities. And even though that could be under control and we could learn to coexist, there's still going to be people out there that don't want to see them back.
I think the other thing we need to think about too is how we manage wolves. I think we need to be careful and think about what's the wise way to manage. How many wolves can we remove from a population without it being problematic?
Wolves, as controversial as they are just another animal. And we're going to have to learn to live with them. And they're going to have to learn to live with us. And those that don't, through the process, will not survive. But that doesn't mean the species won't. And we as government agencies are responsible at the population level to make sure that these animals survive.
You know, wolves as a species can actually have anywhere between 25 and up to 30% annual mortality and still be able to subsist as a population. So they can handle a certain amount of persecution, if you will, or a certain amount of control or natural mortality. But I think we need to be careful on how we do it, where we do it, and what other tools do we have in place to ensure that the population won't drop back to a dangerously low level again.
Wolves are not meant to be pets. They are hardwired to be wild. Wolf and wolf hybrid sanctuaries are targeted at providing a place for animals that have been kept in captivity. And I think most of them have a very clear educational component in terms of helping the broader public understand.
If you take animals that's been socialized, they're used to people, they're used to residential environments, you set them out into the wild, they have instincts but they don't have the skill. And when their hunting is unsuccessful, they're used to people that has fed them in the past, they're going to stay around those areas and they're going to come a lot closer than a wild wolf would, and they probably wouldn't survive 1 week.
That is ultimately what looms over my head as a manager, that I must keep them inside, because if not, if they are either escape or are released, they face a slow starvation. The hunting capabilities of wolves, from what we believe in, is partly genetic, partly learned behavior. These guys certainly have the genetics in order to hunt. However, they lack that learned behavior of hunting. They've never hunted on their own. They've never been taught by their parents to hunt on their own. So therefore, they're not going to be successful.
If you take them to an animal shelter, they usually will euthanize them within 24 to 48 hours. So that's why we try to discourage people not getting wolves as pets, because there's no place for them to go when you decide that you don't want that animal anymore.
So the choice is euthanize them or give them to a sanctuary. And so they serve the purpose of quite literally what they're called, which is a refuge or a sanctuary.
Well, in 1995, when the wolf introduction was going on, there was a lot of misinterpretations about what was going on in the park, why wolves were being brought back. It was a great opportunity for the center to display wolves. We had an opportunity, we found out about some wolves, some captive-born wolves that needed a home. And it allows people an opportunity to see them up close. It allows them a safe environment to see them. It also allows them an opportunity to talk to somebody that can give them the information about the reintroduction. It's just an opportunity to educate the public.
We don't want people coming up to the center and thinking that they have to leave loving wolves.
We present facts to people, so sometimes there's good news in the media, sometimes there's bad news in the media about wolves, and we post both stories.
We try to get as much information, accurate and up-to-date information, out to people. The whole point of education is to let people think.
Yellowstone is a wonderful place to see wildlife, but you don't necessarily have somebody you can stop and ask questions to.
We do not consider ourselves a zoo. We believe we have a different ethic because we are solidly based in education, and we happen to have a captive set of wolves here due to a situation happened historically. These animals needed a place to go, and so WERC was formed in order to house them and maintain their life as best as we could during their lifespan. And then we also allow the public to have the opportunity to see the animals, which usually makes a pretty profound experience for the people who do get to see wolves up close.
So the center's purpose is to really get this information out to people. And depending on the age group, depends on how much information we can give and how we provide it.
We want people to come in here, have an opportunity to see wolves, have an opportunity to ask questions, and then when they leave here, they can make a decision about what kind of involvement they want to get into, whether they want to donate money, whether they want to become an activist in the park, whether they want to go home and tell their friends and family about wolves. It's up to them, and that's why we're here. We want to give people information about bears and wolves and let you leave here with a better understanding about both species.
Our sanctuary is 100% through donations. We have educational tours that we do out here. We also do programs at schools, state parks, youth centers, where we'll take a wolf actually to those facilities and do wolf education programs. So we're funded 100% through donations.
We receive no governmental, either federal, state, or tribal money whatsoever. We rely upon the funding from people who believe in our mission and who believe that that an educated decision is mandatory in order for us to make the intelligent choice if wolves should be here to stay or not.
The Discovery Center obviously is a not-for-profit organization, so anybody who walks through our doors and pays admission, that money does help to run the center. We also have membership programs here. We have an Adopt an Animal program here, and you can't take the animal home, but your fee does help to pay for food costs, veterinary care, things like that. We do have private donors as well. But basically we don't get a lot of help we don't get any help from the government. So basically it's when you walk through the doors what you are willing to donate to us and how much involvement you want to get in with the center.
Well, you know, just because you call yourself a sanctuary doesn't necessarily mean you're a sanctuary. Now the facility that we have out here, and there's actually a couple others that are in this state, we have more enclosure with natural habitats. And I believe that if you're going to have these animals, you want to have the most natural environment that you possibly can for them, because that's where they belong.
Is it an enclosure? Yes. Is it artificial? Sure it is. But we've made it as natural as possible, and it does give people an opportunity to see the interaction and pack behavior for wolves.
And we have natural pine trees and aspen trees, rock formations, and they're allowed to dig their own bins, even though we provide that for them too. They're with a compatible playmate.
So they pretty much make their own decisions, they live their own life inside that enclosure, and we simply, our job is to maintain them inside the enclosure because they cannot survive in the wild on their own. So we maintain them inside the enclosure and keep them fed.
So we try to keep it as natural as possible and try to give them the best possible life that we can in a captive situation. There are so many ways to become involved with conservation.
We have to be better stewards of the wild. And the primary way here in North America that we can do that is to ensure that wolves are returned to the hunting ground of their ancestors as broadly as possible, as quickly as possible.
The atrocities that humans have done to the gray wolf in particular, such as dynamiting dens with puppies in them, and burning wolves alive, and quartering wolves, and the torture that these animals have put up with, all because of our misconceptions of this animal historically, can all be corrected by us restoring this animal to the land in which it rightfully belongs in. I believe strongly that the wolf has its place in this world. It needs to be here for generations to come, or else it is just the first of a long list of environmental degradations that humans will continue to do eventually till the Earth ecosystem collapses, which would end up in our demise.
Wolf reintroduction to Yellowstone National Park is very symbolic of what we can do to make things different from an environmental and conservation standpoint. It is one of the most successful conservation activities that we've done as humans.
Without conservation, we're not going to be able to someday see the wolf, you know, back into our ecosystem anymore.
Restoring wolves and protecting what's left of wild America is a personal endeavor.
In my time of living with a wolf pack, the most profound thing that I've seen with these animals are they are incredibly intelligent and somewhat emotional animals. They really do care for their own, for their young. They care for their old. That's one of the very few things we've seen in any species out there, very similar to humans, where we care for our elders as they grow older and not able to care for themselves anymore. Wolves do the same thing. There are so many similarities between wolves and humans, it's astonishing.
You know, the idea that man and wolves are very similar is true from an evolutionary standpoint, in that we're both highly social, highly intelligent species that have a pretty large impact on the landscape. So in a lot of ways, we do share a lot of similarities. The kinship patterns that we find in wolf packs is not unlike humans. So I think from a biological and behavioral ecology perspective, wolves and humans do share a lot of similarities.
I think that we as humans are fully capable and fully intelligent enough to be able to live in harmony with our surroundings and with our environment, whether it be the wolf or the elk or the white-footed mouse. It doesn't matter. We all need to live together on this planet.
I just think that people really need to take a step back and really become informed about all the issues surrounding wolves. There's a lot of myths, a lot of misconceptions.
Now we have much more information and much more knowledge about wolves. We're still gaining it. Every day we're learning more about wild wolves. And what we're learning is that they can live in harmony with their prey species and with humans. And we can minimize the conflict between humans and wolves. And we can all live in harmony with this animal that has its just place here.
The important thing is that wolves are an important part of the ecosystem. Yeah, they're a top-of-the-line predator. We don't want people to think they're pets or dogs for that matter. But they play an important role in the ecosystem.
The Endangered Species Act was never created to keep animals listed forever. I think it's time that we start demystifying wolves.
Wolves have their place. Wolves are not, they're not godly creatures. They have their faults as well. They do things that we as humans deem unacceptable, such as depredating on our livestock, our owned possessions. They sometimes kill dogs. They sometimes do things that really aren't favorable for us as humans in our society. But we all must realize that these animals have a place in this world. They had a place in this world before humans became as populous as we are now.
Start thinking of them as another big game animal. They aren't demons on one hand. They aren't mystical beings on the other. They're a critter out there on the hill trying to earn a living like the rest of us. And I think the quicker that we understand that and respect that in the wolf, then the easier management will be, and the easier that people will accept wolves. That's my hope.